face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. This nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Policy Dialogue series with alumni, staff, faculty, and students from the University of Maryland School of Public Policy. The views expressed do not represent official positions of the school or alumni network. Our goal is to discuss specific policy solutions that can address and solve the current local, national, and international challenges we face. We are recording this on February 22nd, 2021. My name is Evan Papp, and I graduated with the class of 2011 with a focus on international security and economic policy. And I'm the executive producer of Empathy Media Lab, which publishes content on labor, political economy, art, and culture. Joining me is fellow alumni, Ly Nguyen, who is a senior associate at Asia Group Advisors and is based in Hanoi, Vietnam. The Asia Group Advisors, or AGA, is a strategic advisory firm specializing in market entry, government affairs, and public policy in Southeast Asia. And Ly graduated from the University of Maryland School of Public Policy, class of 2012. Ly, long time, great to see you.
Thanks, Evan. Great to see you as well. And thanks for having me today. Glad to be part of this today. So I actually never thought I would go to public policy 10 years back when I started college, because it wasn't something that we talk about in Vietnam. And so I came to the US and did my undergraduate in initially public relations, and then got acquainted to international studies. And that's how I slowly put my feet into public policy, international relations. So then I decided to do a graduate degree in public policy, development studies at Maryland. And that's how I got into public policy. So I graduated, came back to Vietnam with the passion to contribute to community development in Vietnam, which was why I was working for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies for my first 6 years, and then with the World Health Organization in Vietnam and Bangkok offices. And then I only got into public policy consultancy within the past 1 year and 7-8 months. So it's still relatively new to me, and but it's been interesting, and I'm glad I've got down this path.
How has the government handled COVID so far in Vietnam?
So I have to say, compared to other countries, I think Vietnam is in a relatively good position in terms of COVID handling and in terms of the COVID situation. So as of today, we only have over 2,000 cases, and the death stands at 35, which is really extremely low compared to other parts of the region or in the world. So the Vietnamese government has been lauded for the relatively effective handling of the COVID-19 pandemic in Vietnam, because the government was very decisive from the onstart. So they actually closed down the border since March, when the other parts of the world were still questioning whether this was really a pandemic. There was really a pandemic happening. And the government also enforced very strict and aggressive health checks and contact tracing from that moment. And foreigners coming into Vietnam or Vietnamese coming into Vietnam were on a 14-day quarantine from March 2020. And the Vietnamese government also took a very, I think they were very effective in the use of mass media, also thanks to their ability to control mass media in Vietnam. But they were able to put out very consistent messaging efforts and contact tracing information of the infected. So that's why I think Vietnam has been in a very controlled place in terms of the spread of the pandemic.
That's great to hear. It's really beautiful. We obviously in the United States have struggled to have a federal policy for the first year. We're trying to put one together now, but it was completely moved away from a federal coherent policy to just do state by state, and we saw that has not worked at all. So I'm glad to hear that people are healthy there, and that you're not being devastated by it as in some places.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about your work in the Asia Group Advisors, could you talk about the background and what it is, and any projects that you may want to discuss that you're working on?
So I think you've already provided a very good overview of Asia Group Advisors and what we do.
Mhm.
So we're a public policy and government relations consulting firm based in Singapore, but we cover Southeast Asia region. So basically, right now we have offices in 7 countries in Southeast Asia, including Vietnam. So I'm with the Hanoi office, and we're supporting businesses entering or looking to enter Vietnam, or those who have been in Vietnam for years, but looking to expand their market, or wanting to keep up to date on policies developments that will affect their business plans in Vietnam. So right now we cover a host of sectors, include from ICT, fintech, to manufacturing, ride hailing, and a number of other sectors.
Very cool. And I saw that you recently co-authored an article titled Vietnam's New Leadership Picks: Compromise and Concessions Between Factions Bode Well for National Stability. And you and your co-author wrote, Vietnam's Communist Party has settled on its party chief and proposed top candidates, which altogether would make up a new 4-pillared leadership for the next 5 years. So could you discuss who are those 4 pillars, and what they are setting out to implement in public policy?
Mm. So in Vietnam, the government is made up of the main 4 pillars. The first one, which is the most powerful in the country, as you know, Vietnam is a communist party state. So the most powerful position is the head of the party, which is the general secretary. So right now, the general secretary, cum state president, is Mr. Nguyễn Phú Trọng, who has been holding the General Secretary position for 2 terms, but he has been reappointed, re-elected by the by the recent Party Congress to stay on for a 3rd term, which is unprecedented. So he's probably seen as the most powerful man in the country in the last few decades since the country reunification. So since Ho Chi Minh, and it's most likely that he will stay on to hold the general secretary role, whereas the other 3 positions, the state president, the prime minister, and the chairman of the National Assembly positions, have been appointed by the Party Congress, but will need to wait for approval by the National Assembly.
And so that brings me to the next question. In your article, you talk about some economic reforms that are being implemented. What are those economic reforms?
So actually, Vietnam has implemented the đổi mới, or economic and political reforms, since the late 1980s. And we've seen a number of developments in Vietnam, both domestically and internationally, in terms of political and economic reforms. For example, Vietnam is implementing a socialist-oriented market economy. So it's taken a huge strides towards a liberalization and privatization of the economy. What is called privatization in Vietnam is called equitization of state-owned enterprises. So because a huge number of large enterprises in Vietnam are still state-owned, the government in the past few years have been progressing towards the equitization process, but which have been quite slow due to a number of administrative procedures and other issues. I won't go into details this time. But Vietnam has also made progress in terms of joining various free trade agreements, like like joining ASEAN in 1995, or WTO in 2007, but also very recently the comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, which the US was supposed to be a part of, but pulled out last minute, as well as the European Union Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, and the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which was just ratified last year. And in terms of domestic policies, Vietnam has also implemented a number of economic reforms, including the new investment and enterprise law, which are looking to provide additional incentives for foreign direct investment, as well as especially in high-tech and environmental friendly industries and sectors, and also reduce the cost of doing businesses for foreign investors in Vietnam.
So the U.S.,
So,
yeah, pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that was signed under Obama, and then the Trump administration pulled out, and the countries of, I believe there's many different countries, but the Trans-Pacific Partnership was between Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, Vietnam, and the U.S. And then, as you mentioned, the group of nations without the U.S. ended up signing the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. And what are the thoughts in general about from the Vietnamese side about the U.S. getting back into a trade alliance? Is there some hesitancy because of the whiplash of the change in policies and things like that?
no, I think in general, Vietnam look at this side, but in general, Vietnam has been pretty open to facilitate trade with foreign partners, especially the European Union, the US, amongst others. And I think Vietnam, in principle, really welcomes the US to be part of the CPTPP or whatever version it is with the US. But definitely it would be in the interest of the US to join the CPTPP, especially with the China being part of the RCEP agreement, which is the largest agreement in the world so to date. So it gives China definitely an advantage with partners, trade partners in ASEAN. So I think definitely it's in the U.S. benefit to be part of such an agreement with the Asian regional partners.
I think one of the issues that came up were some agricultural protections in Japan, for instance. There's environmental concerns sometimes, and also labor protections. Do you have some thoughts about how we can ensure that the labor protections are enforced everywhere throughout the partnership, and it's not just a race to the bottom to one place or the other that may be exploiting labor or environmental standards?
So I think in the region, and particularly Vietnam, Vietnam has made a number of commitments to improve environmental and labor rights. For example, with the EVFTA, this is so with RCEP, it's not so heavily focused because it's more focused on the tariffs reduction amongst the partners. But with the EVFTA in particular, it's where environmental standards and labor rights protection are really brought forward, and Vietnam has committed to a number of improvements. And in the process of negotiating the EVFTA, Vietnam has also made concessions by amending its labor code last year, along with a number of implementing regulations, as well as enforcing environmental standards in recent as well as upcoming investment projects. So we've seen Vietnam definitely making concessions in these arenas. And I think the same can be made with other countries in the region.
It's great to hear. And there's always the threat of sometimes in the liberalization process that countries remove some of the protections of the people and things like that. So it's good to take that, very measured reform pace. And I appreciate you filling me in because I'm not knowledgeable and I've never been to Vietnam. So I appreciate you explaining it to me.
Okay.
And so looking into the future of Vietnam international relations and policy, where do you see opportunity and hope?
I think Vietnam will continue to hold balance between openness to globalization and foreign trade while protecting domestic businesses and government control over important assets, especially including information and data, which is a huge and important asset for countries, not just Vietnam, in the last as well as in coming years.